I'm not familiar with very many terrorists. I'm not sure I can pronounce their names, but I have looked into three of them. Carlos the Jackal, I can say his name easily because that's English, and he's from Caracas, Venezuela, trained in Cuba and in the Soviet Union and the Lumumba University for terrorists and generally creepy people. I can do his name and his original Latino name is Ilich Ramirez Sanchez. I can do that. When it comes to some of these Arab dudes, I have a little bit of trouble. And of course, we've heard of Bin Laden. Well, I can do that. Okay. And the third one I'd like to mention is Ayman al-Zawahiri. And I'm not sure I'm saying his name correctly, but I think you know who I'm talking about because he's number 2 in al-Qaida. The leftist, the liars, the disinformation campaign put out by the left and also promoted by a large part of American media portrays these terrorists as poor Palestinians. They have to fight with their bare hands against the oppression of the imperialists. Well, no. You can look at Wikipedia and find that none of these three are poor. None of these three are Palestinians. None of these three fight with their bare hands. They've been trained to use advanced weapons, bombs, and terrorist tactics from hell. They don't fit the stereotype. In other words, the media is misinforming the American people. Most of you have never heard of Wikipedia and don't know how to find it, so I'm going to read just a couple of words. Just a couple of words. Just a couple of words. And it's only got one difficult word in it, and you can master that, just like that. Jahiliya is the Muslim equivalent word of apostasy, degeneration, backsliding. Okay, now I bring this up because I want to point out the true motive of Zawahiri. Zawahiri was concerned about this state of apostasy. His view of the Arab people was that the Muslim community had been extinct for a few centuries, having reverted to Jahiliya, the state of ignorance and the guidance from God, to restore Islam and to free Muslims. Jahili society, along with its Jahili concepts and Jahili traditions and Jahili leadership, had to be eliminated. So who was his target? Anwar Sadat. Because Zawahiri was an Egyptian and heavily influenced by his uncle, who was a lifelong student of the radical Islamist thinker Sayyid Qutb. Sayyid Qutb, I'll mention this dude briefly. He was an educator in Egypt sent to Greeley, Colorado to study education. And he came back and wrote some books for the Arabs, for Arab consumption, filled with lies. He described the United States as being a degenerate, ungodly, materialistic nation, and the only thing he saw in his trip to the United States was the little Colorado town of Greeley and the little community college or teachers college at Greeley. He did not see a lot of degeneration, materialism, hedonism in Greeley, Colorado back in 1948, where teenagers went to a church dance where the most racy and suggestive song played was entitled "Baby It's Cold Outside." You can find that song and listen to the words. Qutb supposedly found that very offensive, and he came back and started preaching about degeneracy. Okay, Ron Paul is wrong. All of this al-Qaida stuff started with Qutb, passed to Ayman al-Zawahiri, the dude that was worried about Islamic apostasy or backsliding. He wanted a revival of the old-time Muslim religion. He wanted to return to the good old days. It has nothing to do with supposed overthrow of this fellow named Mossadegh, an obscure politician from the distant past over in Iran, who was trying to nationalize British Petroleum's assets, or the assets of the petroleum organization that, or company that became known later as BP, British Petroleum. And it was this overthrow of the government was not a secret, not nearly as secret as you would be led to believe by the propaganda put out by the left, because the document which is made available describing this overthrow of Mossadegh, and I forget its name, and maybe I'll put it in the description later if I remember it. But the document plainly said that it is the policy of the United States government and the British government to protect the Iranian people from Soviet expansionism. You know, the Soviets wanted to seize their oil assets. This dude Mossadegh was a threat to the West because he was making friendly with the Soviets. It was the policy of the United States government and the British government to remove him. It so happens that the mullahs who hijacked the Iranian Revolution in 1978 did not care for Mossadegh either. They were not the least bit upset that Mossadegh was removed. They didn't like him either. That is not their motive for fomenting hatred against the United States. Even though Ron Paul's organization has a few supposed scholars, these scholars have twisted minds. They're perverted. They tell lies. Everything that I've just said is the frank truth. It's all common knowledge. There's no conspiracy theories. You don't have to understand European banking families going back to the year 1637 or some kind of extreme stuff like that. It's the basis of this war in which we find ourselves is simply that the followers of socialist theories are trying to overcome and infiltrate, absorb, take over, conquer the West with a capital W. And they're using militant Islamic whack jobs to help them because the enemy of my enemy is my friend. But the Inspector General's report, in a footnote, commented that it is noteworthy that post-war debriefs of Saddam Hussein and Tariq Aziz and the senior al-Qaida operative known as Libby, as well as document exploitation by DIA, all confirm that the intelligence community was correct. Iraq and al-Qaida did not cooperate in all categories alleged by Feith's office. From these sources, the report added, quote, the terms the intelligence community used to describe the relationship between Iraq and al-Qaida were validated, namely, no conclusive signs, and direct cooperation has not been established. Zarqawi, whom Cheney depicted as an agent of al-Qaida in Iraq before the war, was not then an al-Qaida member, but was the leader of an unaffiliated terrorist group who occasionally associated with al-Qaida. He publicly allied himself with al-Qaida in early 2004 after the U.S. invasion. And I want to make this point. What difference does it make if that's true? Zarqawi was a terrorist if he was not a official member of al-Qaida, official leader of al-Qaida before the invasion. Who cares? It's immaterial. You missed the point. This is a war on terrorism. This is not a war on al-Qaida.